It's crappie fishing on Lake of the Ozarks, wintertime, water temperatures down in the low 40s. We were doing what we call either bow and arrow fishing or dock fishing, which is basically drawing a bait back, shooting it underneath the dock, and then retrieving it back to you and trying to catch suspended fish that are using the shade of the dock for structure.
In the fall and especially in the wintertime, when this water drops another 10 degrees and gets down to the 30s, these crappie will get a lot like smallmouth, where they'll get in tight schools. And it might take you a minute, a few casts to finally get one to bite, but once you get the first one to bite, it'll actually fire the school up.
At the lower water temperature, the fish, a lot of people think you got to fish deep and you got to fish really slow. That the fish in the wintertime will get sluggish, but I think a lot of it's just the opposite. The fish will actually go on a feed in the wintertime because they're trying to build themselves up for the oncoming spring, and then they're also having to eat a lot of food to basically to fight the cold temperatures just as we would do.
In past years, you can catch fish just floating around the dock. They're outside of them. And then it's kind of like the fish are evolving. And then it got to where you could shoot them, but if you only got 4 or 5 foot underneath the dock, you could still catch fish. Now, if you don't bury to the back of it, you're not catching.
I've had a lot more success in the wintertime shooting docks than summertime. A lot of that's because I spend a lot more time on that particular body of water shooting docks in the winter because it gets so crowded in the summer. But dock shooting for me, it starts early fall and goes out throughout the winter and then all the way through into late spring. As far as dock shooting goes, I think one of the popular beliefs is that you need an extremely short rod and a very flimsy rod to shoot docks. And I think it's just the opposite, especially on, like the lake that we are on, where you have floating docks versus, pole docks that are permanent structures, because you're trying to shoot into a tighter hole and you're trying to get a lot farther underneath the dock. So I prefer a 6 to 6.5 foot, the stiffest pole I can get. A stiffer rod will give you more accuracy and it'll also give you more distance.
Yeah, normally about 16 to 18 inches shorter. That way once you get your bow, you're not way behind you. Like right now, I said earlier, the water temperature is 49 degrees and we're sitting in 3.3 foot of water.
Anytime you can get on a body of water, such as Lake of the Ozarks, especially that lake because it is a high traffic lake, and you can go out in the middle of the winter time and catch a limit of crappie and it's peaceful, there's nobody else around. You don't have other boat putting pressure on the same fish. So you're able to, fish basically freely.
When you're fishing the lake, it's you're always going to read the banks anyways, and trying to get different contours and stuff. And like on this particular spot, you can see a stump up there where somebody has cut that tree off, and then right below it's a rope where the tree is actually tied to the rock bank.
If you're just getting into it and you want to catch fish, springtime is actually, probably it's time of year the fish are the most predictive. You start looking for water temperatures between 55 and 65, and the fish will, be on the banks. So you could basically cast and retrieve to the banks and catch a lot of fish.
So if you can get wind blowing in a consistent direction, especially for more than 12 hours, you want to fish the wind side where the wind's actually blowing in, you'll have a lot better success.
The only difference between winter fishing and other time of the year fishing, as far as winter time versus the other 3 seasons, is where the fish will typically locate in the water column. When that water gets down, say below 45 degrees, the fish will typically drop in the water. So instead of shooting your bait underneath the dock and retrieving the bait directly back to you, you want to click your bail and let that bait fall for at least 4 to 5 count, and sometimes let it pendulum all the way back to you. We set a lot of structure. It seems to help out a lot. It gives us a place to pinpoint fish. We like, our favorite structure is actually a porcupine fish attractor, which is a PVC bed. Basically has a center sphere and it has 26 pieces of PVC coming off of it. We catch fish out of them year round. Basically what we're doing is we'll set a piece of structure, whether it be a porcupine or something else in an area. And what we're trying to do is bring the fish in the whole area into into that bed. You know, it gives them a place to hide and feed out of and protect, but then also it brings a large number of fish into a small area, so you can cover it a lot faster and pinpoint your fish better. In the wintertime, we'll actually use a larger bait than what we do in the summertime, and a lot of that just match your hatch. So in the wintertime, we'll throw like a 2.5 inch muddy water bait, which is a solid tail bait, excellent for dock shooting, you know. In the summertime, your shad have already hatched out, and now you have the small shad fry, and your year-old shad are starting to get too large for a crappie to feed on. So we'll go down back to a smaller bait and use like an 1.5 inch Southern Pro Little Hustler or some type of bait such as that. Not necessarily the next summer. Where you see the drop-off is 2 or 3 years down the road. When those fish become, you know, your tournament-size fish, your 1.5 pound, 1.75 pound fish. As them fish, each age class, you know, when you take a 9-inch fish out, and then the next year that fish would have been 10.5 inches, and each year, there's so many fish caught out of each age class. So then once they actually get to the tournament-size fish, or what we call tournament-size fish, or your big fish, there's a lot fewer fish left in that class because of that. So if you have a you know, warm, mild winter where everybody's catching a lot of fish, and then a spring after that you're catching a lot of fish, you're putting a dent in that population as far as that age class. We use what's called a hummingbird side imaging. Basically what it does is you can go out large distances to both sides of the boat and you can cover a lot of water. Well, by doing this, we can also run directly down the front of a dock and basically look underneath the dock and peek and see if there's fish located, suspended under the dock, and how many fish are underneath the dock to determine whether to fish it or to basically avoid it and go on to the next dock. It would save a lot of fishing time. I like deep fried personally. I've ate crappie, you know, numerous different ways. Any crappie is good, but I think deep fried is probably just something I grew up eating, and just something I like.
Remember earlier when I told you that we'd look at some more problems that Bill always seems to have with equipment? Well, that time is now.
Something that always has amazed me, many anglers actually believe that wind drifts shad. It pushes the shad, it drifts them up against the shoreline. Well, that's not the case at all. What happens, the wind, what it does, it drifts the plankton. And in turn, shad being filter feeders, what they do, they move right into where that area of plankton is. That's part of it. Oh, come on. Get behind. Oh, man. What is going to happen next?